I'm currently sipping on a sparkling water from my friend Kate's brand. It's called Zen Donkey Farms. They make juices, sparkling waters, all sorts of really wonderfully tasting things, and it all benefits their nonprofit called Zen Donkey Farms. And I just love them. I'll leave a link to their store online. Because it's fresh juices, you can really only buy it locally here in Kansas City. So if you're in Kansas City, they do deliver, or they're at the Overland Park Farmers Market. They're also in Hy-Vee's here in Kansas City. But if you don't live in Kansas City, you're SOL and you cannot get this greatness. All right, welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. If you are new here, hi, my name is Carrie. I am a TV host and I live in Kansas City, Missouri. It has been a hot minute since I have done a book recap, and I have a couple excuses for you, and you can tell me if they're good enough or not. Number one, I just haven't been reading as much lately. This tends to happen in the summertime. I am a ferocious reader in the winter because I cannot stand to step outside into the cold, and it's dark for like 20 hours a day. So as a result, I read a lot. And number two, I have just been really busy, and vlogging in general, as you guys know, has not been as consistent as I would like. So those are my excuses. You be the judge if that's valid. Now, I am here to make amends. So we're gonna do a book recap for the months of April and May. So the reason why I feel okay with doing this all together is because in the month of April, I only read 4 books. And then in the month of May, I also only read 4 books. For those of you who are mathematicians, that is approximately 1 book a week, which I need to remind myself is still really good. I am not a professional book blogger. I am not a professional reader. I am not a writer. I am not any of those things. I just read in my spare time. And I follow a lot of book vloggers and bloggers and writers, and they read, 20 books in a month, and I start to look at what I'm doing and I feel like kind of poopy about myself, and I'm like, why aren't I reading more? There's so many books I want to read, and I can't get to them all, and this and that, and like, it is their full-time job to do that. I have a full-time job and then some. So I need to give myself some grace. That is still really, really great. A book a week is fantastic. My Goodreads goal is always 50 books a year, and I am currently sitting at 35. So I am doing absolutely wonderful on my Goodreads goal. And above all else, I need to remember that reading is fun, that I just do this for fun. I think there's so much comparison in how we look, but also in like what we're doing. And it even goes down to the books that we're reading. Like, I know other people feel this way as well. And we just need to remember we read for fun. We read to get lost in a story, and it can be tempting to want to read the most, but like, it's just, that ain't gonna be me. It's just not gonna be me. All right, let's get on to our book reviews for April and May. The first book that I read in the month of April is a biggie. I finally read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. If you've been following along for a little bit, then you know that 2024 is the year that I wanted to dip my toes into fantasy/romantasy books. But I was really cognizant that I did not want to get dropped off in the deep end because I thought it would scare me and it would make me go run for the hills and never want to try it again. So I was strategic, and I started with the Divine Rivals duology, which I really, really loved. And I conquered that and really enjoyed it, and I thought I was ready for Fourth Wing. Sarah J. Maas is yet to come. I will get there eventually, but I am not ready to jump off into the Maasverse, if you will. I don't even think I need to recap the synopsis of this book because it's so ubiquitous in culture. Like, everyone knows of this book, about this book, all those things. And it is Game of Thrones meets Harry Potter meets the Hunger Games. It is dragons and fighting, and these kids are at school trying to graduate, but not only if they don't graduate, they die. And there's like an impending war going on in this other realm, and all these other things going on. It is action and adventure and dragons and a little bit of smut wrapped in there too. It's just a lot of things at once, and I loved it. It was so good. The writing was so well done, and I'm really, really excited to read Iron Flame, which I wanted to wait a little bit to read. So this was my first book that I read in April, and I just started Iron Flame literally yesterday. So 5 out of 5 stars. It was totally worth the hype, and I'm really excited to dive into the next book. No shocker, like, who's shocked by this? No one's shocked. These books are so, so good. They're so immersive, and I love Game of Thrones. I love, all those elements, so of course I'm gonna like this as well. All right, the next book I read is called Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher. This is the second book in the Dreamland Billionaires series. The first one is called The Fine Print. The second one is called Terms and Conditions. And then the third one, which we'll talk about later on, is called Final Offer. So each one of these books focuses on a different brother. This second book is about the brother named Declan, and it really focuses on a marriage of convenience. Declan needs to be married and produce an heir in order to get like his inheritance from his grandfather. So he marries his assistant, his employee, as a way to like kind of cheat the system and figure out a way to get his inheritance. His employee, Iris, also happens to be really good friends with his brother, Cal, or Callahan, who we will hear more of in the next book. Not surprisingly, I thought that this one was a step better than the first one. I really liked Iris a lot. Honestly, one of the things I enjoyed most about this book was the friendship between Iris and Callahan. I really liked that they were such good friends, and I found their relationship really endearing. Declan, I could kind of take or leave. It was kind of like a grumpy sunshine type of thing, and that was kind of similar to the first book as well. I don't like love these books, but I started the series and I've continued to go. I've liked them enough to continue reading them. And I heard people saying that they progressively get better as they go along. And so far I would agree with this. I think this one was better than the first one. And I think that the third one is gonna be my favorite. So we'll see, I'll talk about that one in a little bit. Overall, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. These books go down super easy. The chapters are short. You can whip through them even though they are a little bit thick, but it's just good like smut reading, and it's a good palate cleanser for me. So this was perfect for what I needed it for. The next book I read is called The Guest by byeeee Paris. You guys, this book was so bad. I don't even know how to put it. I really don't. And I don't even want to say that because I've read some of byeeee Paris's other books that I really, really enjoyed. This was so bad. Like, it was very not well written. Like, it was just poorly written. It was so dry. It was very much like she went for a walk and then she came back and then she asked him what he wanted. Like, it was written like that. There was no like substance to the writing. It was so strange to me. Our main characters are Iris and Gabriel, and they come back from a vacation to find that their friend Laurel has like moved into their house while they were gone. Weird, I know. And they find out that Laurel is like separating from her husband, who is also their friend, and his name is Pierre. That is a very surface level recap of the book because honestly there is a lot of other, like, there's some death and some different things that happen, but like none of it was interesting. None of it, like none of it at all. I was slogging through this book waiting for there to be some big ending at the end that made it all worth it. Nothing. The ending was so bad. The ending actively made me upset. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. This surprised me in such a horrible way. I don't understand. I don't understand. I gave this 1 star, which is really rare for me to do, but this book was so bad. It was so bad. Please no, don't read this. Okay, the last book I read in April is called A Shadow in the Ember by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This book was me taking another step into the fantasy romantasy realm. This series in general came really highly recommended to me by my best friend back home, Bree, who is very versed in fantasy, and so I saw this book at the library and I just kind of picked it up on a whim and decided to jump in. So our main character, Sarah, or Seraphina, is born as a chosen, which means she's destined to live life as the consort for the primal of death. That is all very like minutia. I know that means like nothing, but it is the basis of the story. Literally, what the hell? Like, what the hell? You know, like it's just one of those books where the plot is like so out there. It's hard to describe a lot of what goes on in this book because there is a lot of world building, and I would say that was the only part of this that I took points off for, if you can say that, is that at times the world building and the rules of the world confused me, and I had to go back and reread stuff, or they would like say something that was going on with a creature or whatever it was, and I'd be like, wait, what? Like, what? These rules are just like so arbitrary, and it was hard to kind of like keep them all straight. So unlike Divine Rivals, where the world building was minimal, and even in Fourth Wing, like there is world building, but not nearly on the level of this, I do think that this is like deeper into the fantasy realm, and that's maybe why I was lost a couple times. But honestly, even when I was lost, I was still enjoying it. That's how kind of captivating it was. I really love Seraphina as our main character, and there's some, you know, love story wrapped up in this. This is definitely, you know, romantasy, and I really enjoyed it. The only thing, like I said, that kind of takes points away from me is the fact that there was a lot of world building, and sometimes it could cause me to be confused. But Even that, I gave it 4.5 stars. Again, really enjoyed this. There is another book in this series and I'm looking forward to reading it. I need to put it on hold at the library because these books are hard to get a hold of. I also should mention that these are thick books. This was 647 pages long, so she thick. All right, next up in May, I took a little bit of break off of the fiction and jumped in and I read 2 back-to-back nonfictions. The first one that I read is called The 4 Agreements. I'm sure you have all heard of it. It's a very popular book. I'm kind of surprised it took me this long to read it, honestly, but it is by the author Don Miguel Ruiz. This is a quick little book. It's only 152 pages long and it goes quickly. I read it in one day, and as the title would lead you to believe, it really bases the book off of 4 truths that he says you should follow to live like a peaceful and prosperous life. The first rule is be impeccable with your word. The second one, don't take anything personally. The third one, don't make assumptions. And number 4, always do your best. Again, this book is really big within the self-help / spiritual realm. I really did enjoy it while I was reading it, but now that it's like been a month or so, I have to say like nothing that was said in it like has really stuck with me. I do think just knowing those 4, pillars is helpful and good, but none of the anecdotes that were like told along with those pillars have stuck with me, if that makes sense. That being said, like you might as well read it. It's a quick read. It's 150 pages. I sat down in an afternoon and read it. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. It was solid. Nothing that's gonna stick with me or is gonna make me want to reread it year after year. I read The Alchemist pretty much every year. Like I adore that book. It sticks with me in all the ways and I reread it every time. It gives me the feels. It's not gonna be like that as a book for me, but I don't regret spending my afternoon reading it, so. The next nonfiction book that I read is called You Are a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero. I actually bought this book like years ago and then just put it on my shelf and forgot that I had it and didn't read it. I read Jen Sincero's first book called You Are a Badass, and she has a really witty way of writing. If you've read The Subtle Art of Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson, she is like the female version of Mark Manson. Like she writes in a very fast-paced, fun, crass, witty way that is captivating and I think will appeal to people who like that kind of vibe of reading rather than like the really stiff, reading like blah, 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 blah. Like she is gonna put in anecdotes that are funny. She's gonna get your attention. She's gonna make fun of herself and other people. So if that is kind of your vibe for self-help, like I do think that you will like this book and her other book as well. I personally would never take these types of manifestation spiritual money books as complete Bible. I just wouldn't. In fact, some of the things she mentioned in here, like I don't think I would advise. Like she, in one chapter, talks about how she spent a butt ton of money on a coach when she was making like nothing. Like I'm talking like $60,000 on a coach when she was making like $30,000 a year. Like, and it was this whole, you gotta believe in yourself in order to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that is reckless and you're really lucky that that worked out. So I really don't know that I would advise doing like everything that she said in this book, but she does make good points. And I do think that there are things that you can pick out of this that will be useful to you. But by no means would I say to take that book or any book and like treat it as gospel. Like just do not. Find what resonates with you, take it, and then leave the rest. Overall, 3 out of 5 stars. It went down easy, it was funny, it was digestible, I got a couple tidbits, I took what I wanted and left what I didn't. After reading some self-help, we of course dove right back into the smut. Next, I read Final Offer by Lauren Asher. This is the 3rd book in the Dreamland Billionaires series. So this book tells the story of Cal, or Callahan, and his childhood best friend slash, first love, Lana. So much like the other brothers, Callahan has to do something that was written in his grandfather's will in order to get his inheritance. The thing that he needs to do is he needs to go back to this little lake town where they have this lake house, and he needs to sell the house that was there that they grew up, spending their summers on this lake. It also happens to be the house and the lake and the town where he met Lana, fell in love with her when he was a child, and then eventually broke her heart. The trick here is that the house is in both Lana and Cal's names, and so they both have to equally sign off on the house and sell it. But Lana is currently living in the house, so she doesn't necessarily want to sell it, but she also kind of wants to move on. It's kind of like a double-edged sword type of thing. So there's a lot of moving parts in this. Cal was definitely my favorite brother. I found him to be the most lovably flawed. On top of this being a smut book, it really deals with some heavy things, with some, you know, father-child wounds that were really, really terrible, honestly. It deals with addiction and other like really heavy topics that I think it's easy in a smut book to not want to dive into that territory, to just be like, oh, this is a fun little, you know, rom-com book. But the fact that Lauren Asher decided to take those heavy things on, I think speaks volumes, and I think she did a really good job with it. So I was really impressed with that. We kind of got snippets of the father in the other boys' books, but this book by far, we get a lot of the father, and his story really wraps up in this book, which is good. Have some finality in that. Overall, I gave this one 3.5 stars. It was my favorite out of all the other ones. I think it was just really well done, and I'm glad that they tied things up the way that they did, because it was a satisfying ending, which I appreciate in a series. To read an entire series and then to have the ending just be A, not good, or B, not satisfying is so frustrating. So I am grateful to Lauren Asher that she gave us an ending that really, you know, was worth it, honestly. All right, the last book I read in the month of May is called Darling Girls by Sally Hepworth. So Sally Hepworth is one of those authors that I will automatically pick up. She's written The Good Sister, The Mother-in-Law, The Soulmate, all these other books that I have read and really enjoyed. This book actually just came out in April, so I actually put it on hold at my library before it even came out. So our three main characters are Jessica, Alicia, and Nora, and they are all sisters, or foster sisters, I should say, who grew up being fostered by this woman named Miss Fairchild. Miss Fairchild was strange, to say the least, and this book kind of goes back and forth from when they were young, growing up with Miss Fairchild, to now when they are older and adult. And in the part where they're older in present day, they happen to find out that the body of a child is found at the home, basically where Miss Fairchild lived, where they grew up. So they are brought in for questioning via, you know, the police, to answer some questions about their time with Miss Fairchild, growing up with her in that foster care system. And as they're doing this, they're kind of trying to unravel the past of what happened, while also in the future trying to find out who this body of this child might belong to. There's definitely trigger warnings for child abuse in this one, and just a crazy person, honestly. I don't know if that's a trigger warning these days, but this woman was nuts, and the child abuse stuff was definitely like weird and hard to read. So if that bothers you, don't pick this up. I don't know, I kind of have mixed feelings about this one. Like, it definitely didn't move at a very quick pace. We kind of like found things out little by little, and at times it felt like it dragged. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. It passed the time just fine, but it's not gonna be one that I remember or one that I jump to like recommend to people. That's gonna do it. Those are the 8 books I read in the months of April and May. If you have read any of these books, comment down below and tell me your thoughts, what you liked, what you disliked, or just if you read something really good in the past month or two, like put it down below, because I'm always looking for recommendations. If you want to find out about the books I'm reading in real time, you can always follow me on Goodreads. I will link that down below because I am updating that constantly. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so appreciative to each and every one of you. Make sure you subscribe before you leave, because I always have more content coming your way. In the meantime, I will see you again very soon in my next video. Bye!